Okay, so Dave, welcome back to Mea Culpa. So much to talk about. Let's just jump right into it. So, with Donald Trump's sentencing by the Manhattan DA set for September 18th, how do you think that this event might impact his ability to campaign effectively in key battleground states? Now, you think could sentencing during his campaign rally period, you think that could affect voter turnout?
Well, Michael, good to be back with you. Love your show. As far as whether this will impede Trump's campaigning, it will impede it on September 18th, but Trump is not going to be sent directly to jail or prison. He is going to be allowed to stay out on appeal. He'll be like Steve Bannon. He'll just be able to appeal and won't have to go face the music until after then. And if he gets elected president again, he may never have to face any music. So I don't think it's going to really have an impact on the campaign, although it will look really bad for him if he is sentenced on September 18th, especially if he's incarcerated, even if it's on appeal, because it brings these issues home to Americans in a close election that you've got a reminder that Donald Trump was convicted of 34 felony counts. And not only is he a convicted felon, but a convicted felon who is facing and given a sentence of incarceration or even house arrest. I actually don't envision him being in Rikers. I don't envision him wearing an orange jumpsuit, but I can envision him being subject to house arrest at Mar-a-Lago where he's not allowed to play golf. That could happen. Although, again, any sentence he gets will be postponed till well after the election. Now, as far as turnout, I don't think it's going to affect turnout much. His supporters will always find grievances in everything. People in the middle may say, hey, this is a bridge too far and I can't vote for him. But if you're not motivated already by this election, by the threats to democracy, by the energy of Kamala Harris and the difference that she brings to the top of the ticket, then there's not much else that's going to motivate you, Michael. So I think that September 18th should remain as a sentencing day. I hope that Judge Merchan keeps it because there still needs to be accountability. Even if you're not going to get a trial in Washington, D.C. before the election, at least there needs to be some measure of accountability before voters vote in November.
Yeah, except I'm really trying to hone in on the battleground states. You know, one of the things that I distinctly recall is when Nikki Haley was the only remainder in the Republican race. There's about 30% of what they call Nikki Haley Republicans that said that if Donald Trump is found guilty, which he was 34 times, Manhattan DA case that doesn't even go to the other 3 indictments that are out there, that they could not and would not vote for Donald Trump under any circumstance. That is a death sentence if you think about it. But I'm really mostly concerned that because you're right, we know New York is going Democrat. We know California is going to go Democrat. We know that, there are certain states that vote consistent red or blue. It's the key battleground states that I'm really kind of curious about, and whether you think that the fact that a former president who's now the leader of one of our 2 political parties has been found guilty, forgetting about just sexual assault for $93 million. Forget about business corporation fraud for an additional $500 million. We're now talking about criminal 34 counts. And I'm just curious, based upon your experience, what do you think will happen in these key battleground states? Let's just say like Georgia, let's say Arizona, Michigan, Pennsylvania.
These states are so close that, yes, not just a conviction, but a sentencing could influence some of those swing voters. Remember, the swing voters are generally low information voters who don't pay too close attention to these things. Will a sentencing of Donald Trump break through that? Yeah, it should. And if it moves just a little bit of the people, then yeah, I think that helps Kamala Harris. Donald Trump will say it'll only help him. That is completely untrue. The only way it helps him is with his own base who are already motivated. They don't need extra motivation. They're already fueled by grievance and martyrdom. But the swing voters who aren't paying too close of attention, they could say, hey, you know what, this is a bridge too far where I cannot cast my ballot for a convicted felon who is facing incarceration or at least house arrest for crime. So it could have an impact. There are other things that could have a bigger impact. I mean, in Georgia, the more Donald Trump bashes the popular conservative Republican governor, Brian Kemp, the worse it is for him. He's going to depend on Brian Kemp's turnout machine in Georgia.
Yep.
And you can see that Trump is already starting to feel buyer's remorse from the last time that he bashed Brian Kemp at a rally because he put out a truth that praises Brian Kemp, which didn't sound like him, but he's trying to make amends. And I guess true love never means having to say you're sorry. But when it comes to the swing states, it's stuff like that. It could be that J.D. Vance goes and buys a cheesesteak and asks about Swiss cheese in Pennsylvania. These are these little things that could help swing an election that's so close. So, yeah, it's hard to say how the sentencing is going to take place, but I don't see that the sentencing, if it goes ahead on September 18th, will benefit Donald Trump in any way.
Okay, so David, look, we all know about Trump and his delay tactics. Trump's recent request to delay the sentencing until after the 2024 election, and again, I'm talking about the September 18th sentencing. The whole thing is completely unprecedented. My question to you is, what specific legal arguments could his defense team present to justify this delay to Judge Juan Merchan? And how might the judge weigh these arguments against the public interest in a timely resolution, as Donald should have already been sentenced?
He should have. This sentencing was already delayed till September 18th. Trump's now trying to delay it past the election. He really wants it to happen half past never. That's his delay tactic. He has given Judge Merchan a bunch of reasons to delay it further. Most of them are not good reasons, like that Judge Merchan's daughter worked for Democrats, and so they're all compromised. That's not going to fly. The only reason that he has given that could hold a little bit of water is that the Trump defense team is saying that the Supreme Court's immunity opinion said that if you have to decide questions of immunity, you have to do it at the beginning of a trial. So the trial doesn't even take place until after these issues are litigated. So Trump's saying, before you sentence me, let me litigate these issues up and down to the Supreme Court. But you see what I did there? The Supreme Court didn't say the sentencing has to be delayed. The Supreme Court said that these questions have to be decided before the trial. And in New York, the trial already happened before the Supreme Court case happened. So you can't put the toothpaste back in the tube. This trial already happened. It went to verdict. So there's no reason to delay it any further. Trump may say, well, there's irreparable harm by putting me in incarceration or sentencing me before I could even appeal it. But he's not going to jail before the election, before the appeals run out even. He's not going to be incarcerated. So there's no irreparable harm. He can be sentenced like everyone else, and then just like everyone else, take this matter on appeal, just like every other defendant. So he wants special treatment. I don't think Judge Merchan's going to give it to him. There's always a chance that the appellate court could come in and issue a stay, but Judge Merchan should not. There's no reason to do it, and let it happen on September 18th.
Yeah. So look, I then want to talk about another case, right? Obviously, there's a whole slew of allegations now by Trump's team. This, I thought, was fantastic, right? I mean, this only Trump could come up with something. That Fani Willis has a racial animus towards Donald Trump. I mean, this is absolutely fantastic. Every day you see people like my friend Reverend Al Sharpton talking about how Donald Trump, in fact, at the DNC, they brought up several of the Central Park Five, right, where they were talking about Trump's racial animus towards black people. And it's well documented, it's well known. But Trump's legal team have gone ahead and they're now accusing Fani Willis, Fulton County District Attorney, of racial animus in her prosecution of Trump. Now, legally speaking, what evidence would they need to present to substantiate such a bullshit claim? And how might this strategy backfire, at least in the court of public opinion? We already know that there's no sound legal argument in a court of law, but how do you think this strategy could backfire in a court of public opinion?
In a court of public opinion, it could motivate black and brown voters to come out in bigger numbers when it looks like Trump is trying to play the race card, accusing Fani Willis of being the racist here. There's no evidence of it. To recuse her because of racial animus, you have to show some specific intent and remarks that she made that says, yeah, I'm going to go get this white guy. I mean, but that doesn't exist. It's a concoction in his own mind. It's just a delay strategy, Michael. We've seen this before. Donald Trump's best argument in Georgia has been that Fani Willis should be recused from the case because of her alleged relationship with Nathan Wade, the special counsel. But the judge in the case, Judge McAfee, seemed to handle this appropriately by saying the resolution is not to recuse Fani Willis from the case. It is to recuse Nathan Wade from the case. He'll be gone. Fani Willis can't continue. That is what Trump is appealing. And I don't think it's going to succeed because I think the judge was able to split the hairs enough to come up with a resolution that should accommodate everyone in this case. But for Donald Trump's legal team, delays are what feeds them. That their strategy is delay, delay, delay. It's what motivates them. It's their raison d'etre, and they're going to continue pursuing delays until the Supreme Court of Georgia says no more.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think to agree with you in the court of public opinion, I don't think there's anyone, not even the fake blacks for Trump. That's actually those are actors that are paid by the campaign. I don't even think that they believe that Fani Willis has racial animus and prosecuted Trump because he's white. She prosecuted Trump because he's guilty. He's guilty of a crime, right? Or at least she believes that he committed a crime and that she can get a verdict of guilt. I mean, that's just how the system works. But when it comes to Trump, if you go ahead and you question anything that he does, automatically it's an animus to him. It's an attack on them. He's got to be the protector for everybody. The whole thing is just so absolutely ridiculous. I can't believe how one man has managed to delay the entire judicial system again and again and again, over and over and over again, concocting these sort of bullshit. And people say to me all the time, well, that's what you're able to do when you have money. Yeah, he's throwing a lot of money into the legal system, but there are people who have a ton of money more than what he really has or spent, and they don't seem to get away with it, at least the way that he does. Let me just move on for a quick second. I want to talk about now the Arizona Supreme Court ruling on election procedures. This, to me, again, it's crazy. I don't understand what's happening here. So hopefully you could explain it, at least to my listeners, that the Arizona Supreme Court recently ruled, they issued a ruling that has created massive confusion over election procedures, particularly regarding ballot signatures. So if you could explain, how might this ruling create legal challenges for both parties in the 2024 election, and could it lead to increased litigation after the election?
Well, the Supreme Court upheld Arizona law that requires the ballot signatures to be meticulously examined and just all these little things that the Republicans in Arizona tried to put out for voter suppression. And that's always a concern, Michael. But I still believe that the baseline in Arizona is still good enough that you're going to have a strong vote, especially when Carrie Lake is the candidate for Senate, who is notoriously unpopular. Just an embarrassment. She is ultra MAGA, an election denier, and she's now losing badly to Ruben Gallego, who just got the police endorsement. Yep. Ruben Gallego is a liberal congressman, just got the police endorsement. The guy who was on stage with Trump, and Trump was trying to get him off stage, then after supporting Trump, went and supported Ruben Gallego, which is just amazing. So I don't think it's going to matter much. I do think that that Kamala Harris is going to surprise people in Arizona. And in part, Donald Trump can thank Kari Lake for that.
Yeah, look, I just think it's a problem. The more that they fuck around with these election procedures, the more difficult it becomes within which just to have the election when they call the state for 240 plus years. When they call the state, they call the state. Now, all of a sudden, I think you're going to start seeing these legal challenges in every state, including the heavy red states and the heavy blue states. If your guy doesn't win in that specific state, you could challenge every single ballot. And Trump will turn around and he will make the claim that, look, we found 100 ballots that are iffy on whether or not that's the right signature. It doesn't look like the right signature. It's all about fraud and the system. The Democrats have gone ahead and they've weaponized the election system for Kamala Harris's benefit. He's just sowing doubt in every single process that this country has, used and abided by over the last, 2.5 centuries.
Yeah, well, Michael, I hear you. And there's been a concerted attempt across the country to try to suppress the vote. And then our democracy, of course, is in peril if Trump returns to the White House. But, just to keep in mind in Arizona, when the Supreme Court came in and ruled 5-4 in this way. And by the way, who ruled with the liberals again? Amy Coney Barrett, who is proving to be the best of the Trump appointees in that she seems to be departing from the MAGA coalition here. She seems not to have much more patience for all their stuff. Although she was on the side of overturning Roe versus Wade since then, she's ruled with the liberals against some of these hardcore right-wing positions. But in Arizona, it's just, although they're going to look at signatures closely, it's about proof of citizenship. And it involves a federal form instead of a state-generated form. So I don't think it's going to have a huge impact in Arizona. I think especially because there are groups out there who are very active in voter registration who's going to make sure that the people who have been bumped off the registration rolls because they used the wrong form will get the right form to do it. So I am not as pessimistic as you are perhaps in Arizona. In Georgia, you have every right to be concerned because there's an elections board there that's trying to gum up the works. But again, in Georgia, you're seeing Brian Kemp starting to perhaps take action against that board. And ultimately, it's he and the Secretary of State, Brad Raffensperger, that have the final say in Georgia. And if things go awry, if MAGA tries to pull some election shenanigans, I think they're going to push back and make sure the vote is certified and sent to the Capitol for counting.
Yeah. So, I was telling you before we started the show, I just got back from Chicago. I was at the DNC convention. I hope that you had a chance to listen. I did this mock speech on what I would have said had they asked me to get up onto the podium and speak. But it was a tremendous success, and it was lauded. The convention has been lauded for its strategic messaging and, more importantly, the unity that I think that it showed to all the viewers. In your experience, how effective are these conventions in swaying the undecided voters? And what lessons could the RNC learn from the DNC's approach to energizing its base?
That was the best convention I've ever seen. I attended 2 prior conventions, and this one had the best unity, the best sense of joy. You can just feel it was palpable. Also, you notice a difference in the signs in the audience, and it really does matter. The Republicans had signs that said something like "deport them all." It was
mass deportation now.
Mass deportation now. How do you think that plays to the world when you compare it to the Democrats' signs, which were USA? So one convention had optimism, joy. The other one had negativity. It was a dystopian future for our country, a country in decline, when I don't think most Americans feel that way. And we'll see soon enough as we approach November. I think the Republicans had a convention where they were running against Joe Biden. The numbers were looking good. Trump had just come off the failed assassination attempt, and they were just already measuring the drapes of the Oval Office. They were so cocky that they picked J.D. Vance to be VP when that was the worst possible pick, but they thought it wouldn't matter. They just want a young person to inherit the MAGA, brand, and they were off and running. Well, things have changed. The worm has turned, and I think if the Republicans could do it again, they would do everything again differently. They would change their convention dramatically. They would not appoint J.D. Vance as the number 2 on the ticket, and they would change the stagecraft. I mean, their convention was dull. It was overconfident. It was negative, and the Democrats were all everything different than that, the opposite of those things.
You may have heard me on an earlier podcast talking about that whole mass deportation now signs and so on, and the comments that MAGA, Trump, J.D. Vance, or Shady Vance, as we call him on this show, what they keep talking about, which is to round up like 10 million, what they call illegals, put them into internment camps and ship them out of here. And I keep trying to say that is there's no thought process behind those signs. There's no thought process behind Donald Trump's statements about this mass deportation. Because these folks, they're not just going to show up and say, oh, yeah, I got a phone call that said I have to show up to this internment camp number 23. Here I am. Sign me in. Right? They're not going to go willingly. They're not going to leave their homes. They're not going to give up their possessions. They're not going to move their families out of their dwellings and into a deportation internment camp. Let's get fucking serious for a second. Not to mention, you think that if this thing where Trump is going to start now bringing in the military, because again, we're going to talk about that bullshit tough guy act by Trump. He's going to now bring in the military to come to round up all of these individuals that he deems illegals and so on. You really think that there's not going to be a war in the streets? They're not going back. They're not going anywhere. So the point is what we were talking about at the DNC, figuring out a solution, a path to citizenship that is right for not just these immigrants, these individuals trying to become citizens, but that is right for America as well. That's called inclusiveness, not this white Christian national, exclusive club that, by the way, Dave, you and I don't fall into that club either.
You mean in Cohen and in Aronberg don't fall into that club?
The only club that we fall in is potentially when I get my law license back, maybe a law firm. Aronberg and Cohen. LLC.
Just rolls off the tongue. Michael,
I don't know. Sounds right to me.
Hey, Michael, one thing that really struck me was how Kamala Harris, who's really run an amazing campaign thus far, has taken the immigration issue.
If you're like me, you're constantly thinking about safety of the people and the things that are most important to you and that you value the most. I mean, after years ago, this happened to me and my family. We got robbed. We had a house upstate in New York. One day we showed up, right? It was a holiday and everything was gone. And I knew that we needed to secure the home with the best. And my research led me to Simply Safe. I've trusted Simply Safe to protect my home for years now. And the level of security and customer care has been absolutely incredible. So first of all, I sleep better every night knowing Simply Safe's 24/7 monitoring agents are standing by. They're standing by to protect me. And if someone tries to break in, and then I just send an emergency help when I would need it the most. So I want you to have the same peace of mind that I do, and so many listeners experience every day, which is why I've partnered with Simply Safe to offer listeners, get a load of this, 20% off a system. And just simply visit simplysafe.com/mea culpa. And that's simplisafe.com/mea culpa. What I love most is that SimpliSafe just keeps getting better. With exclusive LiveGuard protection, SimpliSafe agents, they can act within 5 seconds. Get a load. 5 seconds of receiving your alarm, and they can even see and speak to intruders inside your home, warning them that the police are on their way. As a SimpliSafe user, it's no surprise that SimpliSafe has been named Best Home Security Systems by U.S. News and World Report for 5 years running, and the best customer service in home security by Newsweek. Protect your home this summer with 20% off any new SimpliSafe system when you sign up for Fast Protect monitoring. Just visit simplysafe.com/mea culpa. That's simplysafe.com/mea culpa. And that's simplisafe.com/mea culpa. There's no safe like SimpliSafe.
And has gone on the offense. You mentioned the deportation now. I think they thought that Democrats would run away from immigration when we're leaning into it, because it was Donald Trump who killed the very strong conservative immigration bill that was endorsed by the Border Patrol Union. I mean, that was a bill written by Senator Langford of Oklahoma, a border hawk, and it was Donald Trump who killed it. And Trump thought that would help him by preventing Biden from getting a win. Well, I think that could cost him the election, because it helps take that issue somewhat off the table. Where Kamala Harris saying, I'll sign that bill. It was Trump who gutted our immigration laws. And then Biden acted on his own to have these executive orders, which are working. But it really has helped the Democrats. And, I thought that in the past, Democrats have either failed to respond to Republican attacks like swift boating, or have just been on defense for too long. Well, now you see the opposite. They're on the offense. And when the Republicans tried to swift boat Tim Walz, they pushed back so strong that you don't hear much of that attack anymore about his military service.
Yeah, very, very, very true. So look, I want to talk to you another issue. I mean, it's so fucked up if you think about it. Think about the number of issues that are out there right now, thanks to dear old Donald. I've never seen anything like this. Okay, there's always policy debates between the candidates and so on. These aren't policy debates that we're talking about. We're talking about every single day campaign style debate, issues. And I want to talk about, for example, now the debate. I mean, there's now a whole issue that Trump is creating regarding debate conditions. So Trump said that he's not going to debate Kamala Harris unless, I mean, this is hysterical, unless the microphones are turned off while the other candidate is speaking. So my question to you, Dave, are there any legal standards or debate commission rules that could enforce or reject such a demand? And how do you think that this might affect the public's trust in the debate process altogether?
Well, the debate commission has fallen apart. The Republicans didn't want to work with them, and now you have just the campaigns working with the networks to try to figure things out. So it's more of an ad hoc process, and the debate rules that Biden and Trump agreed to included muting the mic, and that also shows you how the Biden campaign had made mistakes. This was a mistake. I knew from the beginning, Michael, when the Biden campaign insisted on the mics being muted when the other person was speaking, that was a mistake. Because one of the reasons why Biden won the election was because he won the debates against Donald Trump. When Donald Trump in that one debate kept breaking in and barging in, he looked like a maniac. And voters were like, I don't think this guy's ready to have the nuclear football. And even though he was already president at the time. And so I think that they made a mistake by insisting that the mics be shut off, because when the mics were shut off, Trump looked more presidential because he wanted to break in, but he couldn't. And that's why Kamala Harris is now saying, turn the mics back on. And Trump's team is saying, no, no, no. So Harris is taunting Trump by saying, oh, so your team doesn't trust you, Mr. Trump. Your team doesn't trust you to keep the mics on. Why not? And Trump so far has agreed with his team to keep the mics off, but we'll see if he just decides to put out a tweet or a truth that says, I'll do it, mics on or off. That's what they're hoping. But it looks like as of right now, they're going to go into the debate with those mics turned off when the other person is speaking, which unfortunately I think benefits the guy who keeps butting in, Donald Trump.
Yeah, I mean, it's sad, isn't it? Right? I mean, everything that he touches creates some sort of a negative impact and a distrust for the entire system. I mean, we were talking about before. I mean, even these election strategy delays by Trump, the litigation, and so on, all that it does is it starts to sow doubt in the various different systems, whether it's the political system, the legal system, whether it's military, our Department of Justice. I mean, that's what he does. He's sowing doubt in the minds of everyday Americans. You see, it's sad because unlike my mea culpa listeners or the people that you surround yourself with, David, there's a lot of people that they don't really have and they don't really get proper information. And so they listen to the things that Donald Trump says. And they're like, yeah, he is running for the presidency. And we are only 65 days out. And then by the time the 18th rolls around, it'll be like 50 days. Wow. Maybe they are trying to hurt his chances of a win. And you see, they ignore, for whatever the reason might be, the very simple fact that this case started over a year plus ago and that it finally went to trial after 9 hours of deliberation. 12 independent jurors found beyond a reasonable doubt guilt. And all he's doing is delaying the sentencing. I don't know why we are not out there pushing the narrative further that sentencing should have already taken place. It was supposed to take place over a month ago. And that the only person delaying these proceedings is Donald, who is then going ahead and twisting the thing like a pretzel. He's manipulating the system to take advantage in hopes, as you said rightfully, that he will be successful in the election and that he can put an end to not just the outcome of the trial by the Manhattan DA, but all of the legal proceedings.
The Supreme Court put their thumb on the scale to prevent Jack Smith and his DOJ team from putting Donald Trump on trial before the election. They had every ability to make their immunity decision last year in December when Jack Smith asked them to, and they refused to. And they waited till the last possible moment, and that prevented Trump from going on trial. So you wonder why people have no confidence in the Supreme Court. Now, that message has gotten out there, Michael, but Donald Trump's message of a weaponized Department of Justice has also gotten out there. And that is so ridiculous because what other Department of Justice do you have an attorney general prosecuting the president's son? Do you think that would happen under the Trump administration? Do you think Bill Barr would last 10 minutes, right? If Bill Barr ever put Trump's kids on trial, he would have a one-way ticket to Gitmo. But Merrick Garland, who appoints special prosecutors who are Republicans who worked in the Trump White House, he's the one being called weaponized. It's quite the opposite.
Yeah. I mean, look, and then on top of that, there's an announcement here that Jack Smith, filed papers within which to revive the Trump documents case. That's the one by Judge Eileen Cannon, who has made some of the worst rulings so far, I think, of any judge, at least that I've ever seen. I'm sure you probably feel the same about that. But what's the story there? I mean, I don't understand how she made the ruling that she did. And what do you think about the chances that this is going to be by, I think it's the 11th Circuit is handling that case? What do you think the chances are that it gets remanded back, and God forbid, back down to Eileen Cannon, if it does get overturned by the appellate?
I think it is very likely the 11th Circuit is going to overrule Aileen Cannon and send it back down to her. Now, Trump will then take an appeal to the Supreme Court. That's going to be interesting to see what the Supreme Court does. You already have one justice, Justice Thomas, who is on record saying that Jack Smith's appointment was unconstitutional, but no other justice at the time signed on to his concurring opinion in the immunity case where he expressed that view. Judge Cannon has relied on Justice Thomas's concurring opinion to issue her ruling that was so out of step with the law, with precedent. She will be overturned by the 11th Circuit, but I'm not sure if she will be removed from the case. Jack Smith did not ask the 11th Circuit to remove Aileen Cannon from the case, but the 11th Circuit has the power to do it on its own. There is precedent for appellate judges to say, you're biased, you got to go. And after all, this will be the second or third time that she has gotten reversed by the 11th Circuit. Remember, she was reversed a couple times last year over the special master issue. And that is something that I'm sure is stuck in the minds of 11th Circuit judges. So she will be overturned. Her ruling was totally out of whack with the law, but I don't think she'll be recused from the case yet. And even if the Supreme Court gets this matter on appeal, I don't think they're going to just agree with her over the 11th Circuit, because the law is clear. There have been special counsels for years and years. No judge in the history of our country has ever ruled the way Judge Cannon has in this area. I'm old enough to remember, Michael, a guy named Robert Mueller or Robert Hur or David Weiss. Boy, it seems like so long ago, right? When those appointees of special counsel were allowed to remain. But for some reason, Judge Cannon has a different ruling.
Yeah. Hey, can I go back for a quick second to the whole debate thing? Because I wanted to ask you, Trump, he's got this, it's a conditional stance, right, on participating in debates. And, these actions by him, they raise questions about, at least Trump is trying to have raise questions about fairness in terms of the entire process. You always hear him talking about, well, I want to do Fox News because he knows that he's going to get all the questions in advance. He's going to get, he's going to get special preferential treatment. And he needs that. Trust me on that one. He then claims, of course, that ABC and NBC and CBS and CNN and MSNBC and everybody else has a bias towards him. It's amazing, right? I mean, the guy just plays the victim card 24/7. What do you think of the potential long-term ramifications of setting such a precedent for future electoral debates?
I would hope that after Trump is out of the picture that things will go somewhat back to normal. I wonder what's going to happen to the Republican Party, because he owns the party, and the normies in the party, the Mitt Romneys of the world, are not welcome back. So I don't know what's going to happen. They could have a major split. I think no one knows what the future holds. I'm just hopeful, being the optimist that I am, that at least when it comes to debates and other things, it will shift back to somewhat normalcy, because Trump has just changed everything. But it's one person who's done that. I think that when he's out of the political picture, I think you'll get hopefully back to some of the norms. The fact that presidential candidates should debate, that should be the expectations. There should be multiple debates. And you shouldn't have one side saying that I'm not going to debate unless you give me a packed house with Sean Hannity as the moderator, air it on Fox News. It doesn't work like that. And so hopefully in the future, it won't ever be like that again.
So let me ask you this then. So you know that Trump's got a whole plethora of conditions for the debates that he wants met. What if they're not met? Is there any legal recourse that
he's already agreed.
The Harris campaign could pursue? And do you think that additionally helps him, or what do you think that the Harris campaign should do if Donald Trump refuses to debate because his ridiculous conditions are not adhered to?
He's already agreed to the September 10th debate. He agreed to it with Joe Biden. And so Kamala Harris is going to be there, whether he's there or not. And he's already agreed to those terms. Now, she's not going to sue him if he doesn't show up, but she'll do something better. And that is she'll continue to call him a chicken, and she'll continue to attack him in the court of public opinion. That will be damaging because Trump's aura is that he's strong and fearless. Well, then why are you chickening out of a debate with a person who you believe is beneath you? Obviously, she's not really beneath you, right? He must be scared of her. So that's how the public will portray it. And I think that he will show up on September 10th because he doesn't want to be called a chicken. And I think that debate will be must-see TV. I cannot wait for that one because, we were all disappointed that the moderators of the Biden-Trump debate did not step in and fact-check Trump in real time. They're not going to do that. That's part of the rules of the debate. Trump got that where there's no fact-checking like that, but Kamala Harris will do it. Biden was incapable of doing it, but Harris will. She will call him out when he says things like Democrats support abortion after birth. I cannot wait for this debate, Michael. Must-see TV.
But for me, this summer has been a scorcher. I enjoy walking Central Park. And after I do my 4 miles, I got to be honest, my underwear feels like I just came out of the pool. But now I wear my Tommy John underwear. Let me be clear about this. Tommy John makes me feel fresher, cooler, stylish, drier, and more comfortable overall than other brands of underwear, especially in warm summer temperature. Lightweight, meshy, breathable, cooling fabrics. You know what that equals. It equals no sweat. Tommy John underwear, it's soft and it's comfortable, and they don't ride up on you, and they keep you really cool, which is the important thing when you're talking about the oppressive heat wave that we're living through. So, not like many of the other brands that I used to wear, Tommy John is different. It's different from the other underwear that I just don't buy anymore. And Tommy John fabrics, they keep you 2 to 3 times cooler, and they dry, get a load of this, 4 to 5 times faster than regular cotton underwear, which is perfect for your summer travel. So shop Tommy John right now for huge summer savings and get 25% off your first order at TommyJohn.com/Cohen. Save 25% at TommyJohn.com/Cohen. Are you listening to what I'm telling you? Shop Tommy John right now for these huge savings. It's 25% off your first order at TommyJohn.com/Cohen. See site for details. Yeah, I agree. Police, I want my listeners to understand abortion after birth is called murder. It's so stupid. And the fact that they didn't call that out when he was saying it the very first time, it's a joke. I want to just ask you this then. The other day we saw RFK Jr. came out and endorsed Trump. And I'm so confused about this guy. I've had him here on the podcast. He seems like an awfully nice guy. We just don't agree fundamentally on anything, starting with vaccinations all the way to to Roe v. Wade. We just don't agree on anything. My question to you is, what impact do you think that this endorsement might have on the electorate, particularly amongst voters who might be swayed by Kennedy's views on vaccines and government trust?
I don't think it's going to have much of an impact, Michael, because although there are some voters who would have gone for RFK and now will go for Trump because they're in line on vaccines, at least more than the Democrat, they agree on Putin, they are conspiracy theorists, but there are also voters, especially the voters who will decide this election, the suburban women who are just appalled by RFK Jr. killing a bear and then leaving him in Central Park, or eating a dog, or talking, or his womanizing. You saw the story with his
37 women that he had affairs on, and then the wife took her life. Yeah. Yeah,
He wrote about it
I
in his
read it.
diary. It's awful stuff. How about the whole brain worm? I mean, that's it. I mean, when Donald Trump got his endorsement, he owns all the RFK Jr. baggage now. And for a party that's trying to tell people we're not weird, RFK Jr. is the weirdest of them all. He's the weirdest of them all. And now they own that label more than ever. So I don't think it's going to have much of an impact on this election. He'll gain a few RFK Jr. voters, and he'll lose a few voters who don't like RFK Jr. But this endorsement is more show than go. It gave Trump a chance to be on stage and pretend he got a victory. That's how desperate he was for a victory. Things have been going so well for Kamala Harris and the Democrats that Trump is pretending this is some major victory to get RFK Jr., who's doing nothing but embarrass his family. Look at the way his family reacted to this. They're humiliated by him, and rightly so.
Yeah, look, I was going to say the same thing. There's, let's say, 100 members of the Kennedy clan. 99 have come out and said, we love our uncle, our cousin, but we don't agree with him. In fact, his sister, Kerry Kennedy, turned around the other day and said that if their father was still alive, that he would be so disappointed in everything that his namesake is doing, from the endorsement to the nonsense, that none of the values that RFK Jr. is espousing are Kennedy values, and that he would be nauseated by him from top to bottom.
Exactly. I mean, look at the people who know him best, his own family. And that's all you need to know. And that's why I wouldn't be worried about his endorsement. The only person who really should be worried about this endorsement is J.D. Vance, because it looks like Trump is sort of running with RFK Jr. as his running mate, and J.D. Vance is being pushed aside. J.D. Vance has a charisma gap, a problem there. He goes to a donut store, doesn't know how to talk, interact with people like normal people do. And I can see him looking at RFK Jr. and feeling a little bit of jealousy there. He may be one of the mistresses in this relationship that gets tossed aside and written about in a diary.
Yeah. So, I wanted to talk for a quick second because one of the things that was a major theme at the convention, at the DNC convention, and I was so happy to see them finally coming up, and I'm talking the Democrats about middle class voters have somehow, over the course of time, just been sort of squeezed out. Where you have, for example, Trump appealing to the ultra rich, and then in the past you saw the opposite with with trying to figure out the dichotomy between wealth, the disparity in the wealth gap. But there's an expiration of Trump era tax cuts that are looming. So the question I want to ask you is, how do you anticipate both Trump and Harris and Kamala addressing this $1 trillion issue on the campaign trail, especially when it comes to appealing to middle class voters, which Trump does not do?
Kamala Harris is right to target that segment of America who does feel left behind. They are ripe for the MAGA message that even though the economy is good, prices are too high in the grocery store, and she's right to go right at those voters, lean into that, talk about her homeowner relief plans, talk about her tax cut for the middle class. Because although Donald Trump will talk about these issues in general, he won't issue any specific proposals. In fact, the only specifics as he's ever had have been to hurt the middle class by trying to repeal the Affordable Care Act, for example, the tax cuts that he had specifically for the rich. So it's not like one side is proposing real items that could help that disaffected group, while the other is providing them with rhetoric, hollow rhetoric. So I think she's right to lean into this.
Yeah. I tell you, I was watching the other day, and a lot of things that Trump does is really nauseating. But the thing that bothered me the most, and I haven't been able to get an answer, maybe you know it, I saw as this orange-crusted Mandarin Mussolini was there at Arlington Cemetery. It was the 3-year anniversary of the extrication from Afghanistan that caused the death of 13 service members by a suicide bomber. And I don't understand, first and foremost. First question is, why was Trump even there? The fuck is he? Why didn't they have me go there and lay the wreath? Why didn't they have a general? Why didn't they have, Mark Milley lay the wreath? Why weren't you there laying the wreath? Why was Donald Trump there laying a wreath, trying to look all presidential and shit? Standing there basically looking up. In fact, when he took a photo with a bunch of the family members, he's sitting there with his thumb up, it's just a dipshit move. But first and foremost, let me just ask you, why and how did he end up being the person asked or chosen to lay the wreath?
It's controversial. There are a lot of people asking that question right now, Michael, because it shows that he still has support within some sectors. Like, after calling military members suckers and losers, he still has support from some people who will then invite him to do things like lay a wreath. And Trump was very eager to do that because he wants to shore up his military support. But it looked like this was should have been a government function and not a political function. But whatever, I think this could come back to hurt him based on the picture that he took at the gravesite there with the thumbs up and the smile. It was so tone deaf that it shows that he still doesn't get it when it comes to the sacrifice and the service of American heroes.
But he doesn't. I mean, you're not using words that are unique to David Aronberg. You're using words that Donald Trump has said about fallen service members, losers and suckers. This is an asshole that believes that the Medal of Freedom and the Medal of Honor are roughly the same, but the Medal of Freedom is probably more special. Can you imagine? And that there are still people within the military ranks that think that somebody like Donald Trump should actually be invited to Arlington Cemetery to honor fallen service members. It's a slap in the face of anybody that put on a uniform, live or deceased.
Well, Michael, we've seen this with law enforcement, that even though Trump was involved in the attempted insurrection by encouraging people to march to the Capitol, and through his words, according to many of the rioters, encouraged violence, yet law enforcement largely supports Donald Trump, even though law enforcement officers died that day at the Capitol or died afterwards as a result of their injuries. So you wonder, how can law enforcement then support a person who has been bashing law enforcement, through his words with his trials, his criminal trials? He criticizes law enforcement continually, federal law enforcement, and yet he gets the support of most law enforcement. So you're asking the right questions. I don't have any easy answers to it. I think part of it is a cultural thing that we are so divided as a country now. It's shirts versus skins. It's Republicans versus Democrats. And no matter what he says or does, people are going to stick to their team. And, that's where Trump said he could get away with shooting someone on Fifth Avenue, because he knows how divided, how tribal we are, and he exploits those divisions.
Yeah, I understand that. But why would why would law enforcement, why would the military, why would they go against their own benefits, their own ideology? I mean, they're sort of putting aside the fact that they're willing to fight for the democratic republic, for our Constitution, for democracy. And yet the guy that they want to support is a guy who wants to rewrite the Constitution, wants to destroy our democratic republic, wants to become an autocrat. I don't see the lure. I just don't see the allure that Donald Trump brings to the table, that these individuals are willing to sacrifice what they believe. I mean, their brothers and sisters are deceased as a result of a suicide bomber that, by the way, it was Trump and his administration that pushed that day to extricate from Afghanistan. I mean, look, it was an ugly, ugly departure. But at the end of the day, like 130,000 people were extricated from Afghanistan. And yeah, 13 service members died as a result. I don't know if I would call that a botched or a failed departure, considering we were in Afghanistan for what, 4 decades?
Well, it was a mess of a withdrawal. The images were shocking, and
It was ugly.
It was ugly. I'm not going to defend it, but Trump should not be dancing on the graves of anyone, metaphorically speaking, for political purposes, because this was a tragedy. And to stand there with your thumbs up and a smile, I just think it's the wrong message. And remember, you heard from McMaster that Trump had leaned on the Afghan government to release 5,000 Taliban fighters. That was the deal they made. So it wasn't like Biden just did this in a vacuum. This was long in the works through the Trump administration. It just happened to occur in the Biden administration. And then, of course, Trump was critical of it. So you're right, Michael. The overall message here is that it is surprising that people who Trump has bashed as suckers and losers, that some of them continue to support Donald Trump. But again, it goes back to the state of politics we're in today, where it's all tribal. And it doesn't matter what you say, what you do. It just matters what the letter is on your chest, an R or a D.
I mean, could you imagine, this is, again, the same guy that wouldn't go to the what was it, in Normandy, because it was raining and he didn't want to get his hair or his suit wet. I mean, and yet they invite him back. And I'll tell you, I'm a little disappointed in the Biden administration that they didn't put a stop to it. I think that they probably could have, and I'm shocked that they didn't. You know, to give this guy this kuvit, this honor, to memorialize our fallen, right? And from a guy who pokes fun at them, calls them, as you said, losers and suckers. I don't know. I truly don't get it. So let me ask you this final question, because the hour here on Mea Culpa goes by very, very quickly. What's in store for Dave Aronberg? What's in store for you going forward? Are you gonna get more political? Are you gonna remain politics? You're gonna go back to the private sector? What's in it for Dave?
Michael, thank you for asking. I'm going to go to the private sector. I'm leaving in January. It's been 12 years at this job as state attorney, and I've loved every minute of it. I was a state senator before then for 8 years, a drug czar in the state. So I've been in government for like 22 years. It's time to start a new chapter. I got married. I want to have children. So I'm going to do a little private sector work, but also I want to see if I could do more also on TV and streaming, things like this, like we're doing. Because when I have a day job, it limits the amount of these hits, these interviews I could do. And so I want to be able to do more of that. And I just didn't think it's fair to my constituents to do more of that when you have a job that's so important as state attorney to keep people safe. So I thought after 12 years, we had accomplished everything we wanted to accomplish. Things are going in the right direction. Palm Beach County is a safe community. And now it's time for me to try something new. And I'm pleased to say that a high-ranking member of my office is now the leading candidate to succeed me, Alexia Cox. So I'm excited about her chance of winning, in case there are any Palm Beach County voters in your audience, and I'm sure there are.
Yeah, well, Dave, so good to speak to you. So good to see you. I'm sure you're going to kill it in the public sector. Most importantly, you're right. Kids are great. You got have as many as you want. God willing. I wish you all the best, my friend, and I will speak to you soon. Disappointed I didn't see you at the DNC convention, but I'll see you in Palm Beach.
See you then, Michael. Thank you, and go Canes.
Go Canes is right.